As we saw earlier on university campuses, the link between the far-left groups and the anti-Israel, anti-Jewish movement is strong in Australia. In the United States, it's a similar story between Black Lives Matter and anti-Semitism. Our next guest has made it his commitment to call them out. He may not be Jewish, but he's one of the best advocates for the message. He's a beloved PragerU personality with a huge social media following. Meet Xaviaer DuRousseau.
These people, they want to take out Jews, they want to take out Christians, they want to take out the Arabs who live peacefully here in Israel. They just don't want Israel to exist. It's the only country that is constantly fighting simply for the right to exist. And people keep asking me why I'm being so outspoken about this issue, because I'm not Jewish, I'm not Israeli, I'm just somebody with eyes. And I see the horror that's been caused here. And there is nothing that could possibly justify what I'm witnessing right now. And I will continue to stand in solidarity with Israel because this isn't right.
BLM affiliates across the United States posted images and messages glorifying the terror attack of October 7, with the national chapter refusing to condemn them. Many of my Jewish activist friends who've ardently championed for groups facing oppression, including BLM, have been left bewildered by revelations like these. What connections exist between the extremist elements in Black Lives Matter and the anti-Semitic rhetoric of terrorist, genocidal, jihadi organisations like Hamas?
That is such a good question. So what I've been saying lately is that the Free Palestine crowd that you're seeing on college campuses in the United States, it's just Black Lives Matter, but rebranded. They've gotten more extreme and they've gotten more irrational, and they're doing even less research, which I didn't think was possible. But where they try to make a connection is they write off everybody in Israel as white, and when that's very far from the truth. I've been to Israel twice. I've seen a very large amount of people of color there, which that really shouldn't even matter. But their narrative is that Israel are the white people and that the Palestinians are the people of color and that they're oppressed and that it's an apartheid and that they don't have rights there. And that is just simply not the case. They're not educated on what's going on there. It's by definition not an apartheid. You have so many Arabs who are even in the Knesset over in Israel. So by definition, that is not an apartheid. And, they don't know the history of how much Israel has continuously given to Gaza and how Gaza really could have been the next Dubai, but they destroyed it themselves because they allowed Hamas to turn their water pipes into missiles that don't work half the time. Or a third of the missiles even land inside of Gaza and hurt their own people. And it's a situation where people here in America, especially getting their information from TikTok, they are so determined to stand up for what they think are oppressed people of color that they are just going to connect that trope to everywhere in the world and try to view it through the American lens. Because even here in America, like I was saying before, police brutality is not the epidemic that these woke activists were trying to make it be. And Black people are not oppressed in this country. We have not been oppressed in a very long time. You will catch me at Air One having $25 smoothies every other day, and I'm a Black man. If I was oppressed, I would not be able to live my life and go where I wanted to go, and I wouldn't be just enjoying the freedoms that I have in this country. But they don't want to hear that. It's easier for them to go with the narrative that white people are privileged and Black people are not, and that Black people are inferior, and they connect these issues because what they're ultimately both based in is Marxism.
Historically, you say you found the conflict between the Palestinians and Israelis complex, but you no longer feel that way. What's changed as far as your understanding about the actual facts on the ground, and why?
The history is very long when it comes to Israel. It is a lot to learn. I'm still learning so much of it. But when it comes to the conflict we're seeing today, you literally have one side that's full of musty genocidal terrorists who are just constantly attacking Israel over and over again. They're murdering babies, they're raping women, they're doing all these things on camera, and they're proud of it. They're bragging about it. I watched the 47 minutes film the 47 minutes of what Hamas did on October 7th. I have seen the damages that Hamas is willing to do and that the Palestinians at large support Hamas doing. And then you have Israel, a side that just wants one singular Jewish state where they're allowed to exist without persecution and exist without constant terrorism. They really mind their business. So which side is the good guy and which side is the bad guy. I feel like that's very easy to take an objective look and say, this side might not be perfect. Israel is not perfect. No nation in this world is perfect. Jewish people aren't perfect. Christians aren't perfect. But they're not going out of their way to do such evil, hateful things in the way that this terrorist organization, Hamas, is doing. So I don't see it as complex anymore. I used to think that because of all the history, you had to know every element of history to make a proper analysis of what's going on today. But really, you don't. You can just look at what's very obvious and what has continuously happened just in the last year.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, but you travelled to Israel in 2023, which you've described as joyous and uplifting. And then you returned again in January 2024 to produce a 16-minute documentary entitled 100 Days After October 7 about your visit to Israeli communities that were devastated on October 7. What called you to do that?
That's a great question. Well, the first time I went, I just went out of curiosity. The PragerU CEO, Marissa, she goes there usually once a year, and she asked me if I want to go, and I told her, I'm like, be careful with me. Like, one thing about me, I will book a flight. If you invite me somewhere, you will see me there. So I went, and like you said, it was joyous. It was amazing. It was the greatest vacation I've ever had. I had such an absolute blast out there. And when everything happened on October 7th, I was devastated because I thought of all the amazing people I met and the friends I met and wondering, like, are they okay? Are their family members okay? Are their friends okay? Are their communities still even there? Are they still in existence? And it just broke my heart. And when I very first started speaking out against anti-Semitism, which was actually before October 7th, because just from my first visit to Israel, I got so much backlash just for saying I was going, which was when it started to click for me how much hostility people still had towards the Jewish community and towards Israel. But when I first started speaking out after October 7th, it was just the floodgates of backlash was coming at me. And I knew that if these people are mad at me because I'm condemning something evil, then I need to lean into that because that's a good thing. I don't care that they boo me because I know what it is that they cheer for. So I just continue to hammer down to make sure that the truth was louder than the lies and that Hamas was not going to get away with twisting the narrative of propaganda all over the world and making it seem like Israel had it coming. That's disgusting. So as time went on, I just had this weird gut feeling, and I can't really explain it, but I really do think it was just God talking to me saying that I have to go back to Israel because all these people kept telling me that go to Israel, see how racist they are, see how they treat you, you're black, like they don't like you there. And I'm like, well, not only did I go before, but you know what? I'm going to go again. And it worked out so well. I want to give a shout out to my friend Justine Brooke Murray. We were catching up at a Turning Point event, and she told me, she was like, I told her how we wanted to go. And she goes, well, I'm actually going in about 10 days. Like, I can call and see if there's any spots left. And I'm like, absolutely. And fortunately, God's plan, there was literally one spot left on that list. And I was able to go with an organizer who was going to make sure that I had all the accommodations I needed so I could go out there safely. And I went. And I'm so glad that I did because I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed that extra layer of confirmation. Plus, that way I could also show it to the audience, like, hey, what I saw last year when Israel was not at their worst, as when they weren't going through all this turmoil, I'm here again, and I'm still confirming to you the racism that you guys are telling me is here. It's not here. The hatred towards Christians that you guys are telling me is here. It's not here. None of those narratives were true about Israel. So going back was my way to prove that not only to myself but to the audience.
Xavier, instead of the outrage being directed at those who were slaughtering Jews, the outrage from October 8 onwards was being directed at Jews for objecting to be slaughtered. What do you really think the world expects Israel to do? I really genuinely want someone to explain this to me.
You know, it's sad that so many people here in America, especially if you go to these college campuses, they literally just want to see Israel cease to exist because they don't understand what Israel stands for or really what's going on in Israel. And if you talk to some of these people on college campuses, they'll say that they want to free Palestine and make it all Palestine. I'm like, okay, well, if you do that, you do realize it's going to just become a ginormous terrorist state backed by Iran, and then the entire Middle East is going to have no democracy there, and then it's going to become this region of hate that is the antithesis of everything that you stand for, especially if you're a progressive. But they don't know that. They don't think about what's next. They only think about what's happening right now until you tell them what is next. They're like, whether it was BLM or it's the craziness that's going on with people thinking that they can change their gender every single day, which is a very real thing here in America. I don't know if it's gotten to that point yet in Australia, but in America, it's a very real thing now. No exaggeration, but they're constantly just hammering down on these ideologies that they do not think about the big picture surrounding. And it's very sad to me to see that Jews are just being shoved into this box where they're being told to suppress who they are. And when I talk to a lot of Jewish people and I tell them, I'm like, well, you should be very mindful of the association that you have or the ideology that you have, because these hyper progressives, they want you to suppress who you are and they want you to hide the fact that you're Jewish. Anyone who wants you to hide your identity, they don't have your best interests in mind. And I think every progressive and every conservative should be able to agree with that. And the advice that I give to every Jewish friend I have and to anyone I know in Israel and really just the people overall is you can't waste all of your energy defending yourself about who you're not. You need to use your energy showing the world who you are. And I think that that's what has happened to Israel and to the Jewish community for far too long, where because they're constantly on defense, they're not allowed to show the world the beautiful aspects of who they are and what Israel represents, and especially the beacon of light that Israel is in the Middle East. It breaks my heart that people haven't seen what I've seen in Israel. And the more I've been around the Jewish community and seeing the way that they are just so loving and they embrace others, and they're not these discriminatory people that they're defending themselves from being. They're really people who want peace and they want solidarity.
How can we effectively communicate to the younger generation who've been heavily influenced by TikTok, a platform controlled by the Chinese Communist Party and considered a primary news source for many impressionable American and other Western minds, that principles such as decency and critical thinking must take precedence over chasing popularity, even if it means standing apart from the crowd?
Well, what it really gets back down to is we have to again make the truth louder than the lies. Right now, the lies are being just completely echoed across the world. And I actually saw a study recently that a lie travels 6 times as fast as the truth does. There's all these stories about it. So we have to get ahead of that, and we have to have more people speaking up and more voices that are willing to say, well, actually, that's not correct. This is what's really happening, and here are the resources for it. But a lot of people don't like having conversations of substance anymore, and that's what really is very disappointing about my generation. But it also gets down to we need to start putting more pressure on both the education system and these social media platforms. I mean, the fact that in these schools they're just allowing so much hatred to run wild. I'm not saying that they need to tell people what to think or how to think, but they do need to, at the very least, condemn this violent behavior that we're seeing on campuses and universities. We can't tolerate that anymore. And we need to be more precise in our education process, because it's actually sad. Most of these people who are being so vocal about the Israel and Palestinian conflict, they've probably never even heard of Palestine or anything like that. They probably have never heard of that entire concept because our education system is completely failing us. And then these social media platforms are just getting away with censoring the truth. Like you saw my 100 Days After October 7th video, that got taken down twice. And TikTok actually threatened to delete my account after I posted it because it condemned saying that it flagged me saying that I was promoting extremism. And the fact that these social media giants are able to get away with that and to craft a narrative that is so clearly set up for the demise of Western society, that is a red flag that we need to address. And I know they're working on banning TikTok right now, not because of the content matter, but because of, Chinese spyware. I have mixed feelings on that ban, but I personally don't think that TikTok should be banned, but at the same time, I won't be stopping it. I definitely won't be someone who is passionate about keeping it here in America, because I've seen the damage that TikTok has had on my generation, and we can't keep allowing social media platforms to get away with that.
I mean, Professor Scott Galloway from NYU, who has been very vocal in support of Israel since October 7, has said, you know what, if I was on campus and I said one pejorative word about African Americans or anyone in the LGBTQ plus community, I'd be marched off campus in 5 seconds flat. And clearly that's not the case when it comes to Jews. So I do want to talk to you about what's going on campuses. The explosion of anti-Israel sentiment and barefaced anti-Semitism on campuses like Columbia, NYU, Harvard, Yale and the University of Texas is evocative of German universities in the 30s. With arrests at NYU, the University of Texas and USC, not to mention Columbia University's COO telling Israeli professor Shai Davidai that he's barred from the area of anti-Israel encampment, tensions really are at fever pitch. And as such a prominent member of Gen Z, what do you think has been the cost of the wokeification of youth?
Well, if it doesn't get stopped soon, it's going to cost us everything. I mean, it's cost us our education, it's cost us our focus, it's cost us our productivity. I mean, I'm very scared to see as more of my generation is getting into the workforce. People used to always say that, you start as super progressive and liberal, but then as you get older, you become more mature and more conservative. But unfortunately, what we're seeing now is because these universities are so woke that instead of getting into the workforce and adapting to the workforce, my generation is now kind of flipping it backwards, where now the workforce is starting to acquiesce more to how we think and our beliefs and making it so it's a safe space for us. And that it's getting to the point where the workforce now is becoming less productive because they're more focused on things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that the bathrooms have the right labels or no labels or whatever they're calling for, because it changes every couple months. And it's very, very scary to see that when you have countries like China running laps around America right now. And America used to be this huge superpower that was always on the cutting edge, but we're getting to the point where we're not anymore because this woke society that we now are living in and being raised in, it's coming to the detriment of our society. It's causing all this crime. It's causing people to not have accountability anymore, and it's causing people to just be overall unhappy and just poor.
You reach a fortune of people every day with your exceptional content. If you could impart one simple message to people of your generation that might lead to their own red pill awakening, what might that be?
Ooh. Wow, that's a great question. If I could give one message to my generation, it would be to remind them that we are the first generation to grow up that is fully aware that the media is lying to us. So it's sad to see how so many people pick and choose what they believe is the truth and what they believe is a lie without looking deeper into it. So I would just say, before you become passionate about an issue, before you become the most outspoken person in the room and the loudest person in the room about an issue, do more research. And I'm not just talking the first page of Google. I'm talking do some credible research, look at history, and connect the dots, because a lot of these, once you start to see the truth and one aspect or one element of the world, it's like a domino effect. That's how I describe my red pilling experience, where it was like I saw the truth in one thing. It was just like boom, boom, boom. Just like historically, I started seeing how all these different things connect. So you have to do the research if you want to be the loudest person in the room. Otherwise, you're no better than the people that you are accusing of spreading propaganda.
Xavier, it has been such a joy to have you on Show of Force.